Yeah, so I'm Steve Boak. I'm the VP of Product Design at DataDog. DataDog is the platform for dev and ops in the cloud age. And so we began as an infrastructure monitoring company. We've since expanded the platform to include application performance monitoring and logging, and now synthetics and a bunch of other tools. And we aim to be the single source for devs and operations professionals in the age of the cloud.
For your main user being a developer, what's the developer experience like?
So the developer experience for DataDog begins with an agent. And this is, I think, a thing that a lot of dev tools have in common that a lot of other consumer and non-developer tool products don't share. You still today need to get started by installing an agent to run DataDog. And so then, depending on your setup, that could mean literally SSHing into a host and running a few commands to install our agent. There are other ways to do it, but that is how we begin collecting data off of the servers that you're running DataDog on. So our agent software collects everything from system metrics to traces to logs, and then you get started creating things like dashboards and monitors and a lot of the stuff that people in DataDog use every day.
Are they moving elements in the UI, or are they doing something on the back end?
Yeah, actually, this is an interesting thing about monitoring generally. It's at a nice intersection. And so for me as a product designer, this is an interesting thing too, that Datadog exists at the intersection of a developer tool and a really compelling UI. That a lot of developer tools are just APIs. When you think of things like Stripe or Twilio, their core business is selling APIs. For Datadog, our core business is dashboards, monitors, things that are highly visual, highly interactive. So a lot of the business in the product is done in our UI.
If someone didn't want to use the UI, could they?
Yeah, for all kinds of things you can automate via our APIs. A lot of our biggest customers do this.
Do you see that term developer can mean a big range of skill sets?
With the move to DevOps, and I think that has really broadened, that's one of the big things that has broadened the meaning of a developer, that when developers and operations were separate, there was a pretty clean wall between writing code and managing infrastructure. That line has, to say the least, gotten a lot more blurry. And so a lot of developers now maintain their own infrastructure, they're on call for their services, so when things go down, they're responsible for that. And they're using tools like PagerDuty in concert with Datadog to manage those kinds of things. And so in addition to the ownership of the infrastructure, you've got now this kind of full stack visibility across the front end, the back end. So, Datadog's platform, again, combines infrastructure monitoring, tracing, and logging. And so that can span across many kinds of developer roles. So front end developers might be very interested in logs as the source of a problem. Back end developers might be looking at traces or at various infrastructure issues. And so all those pieces could represent many different developer roles in a single company that are all kind of coming together to solve the problem.
And when you approach a design problem, are you looking at the user called developer, or do you try to segment?
We segment in all kinds of ways, depending on the size of the company, the kind of company that it is. Developers will be stratified in their roles in very different ways. And so whenever we're releasing a new feature, we target pretty specifically for both the kind of company and the kind of developer. And we'll even go as far as to do private betas and small rollouts of things to a specific customer group to make sure that we're on the right track.
Can you pick a specific story or element in the user experience that you can kind of treat as a case study of, oh, here was this pain point?
When we started looking at AWS Lambda and serverless functions in general, that was a real test of what it meant to combine data from different sources. So to fully understand Lambda and serverless, you're not just looking at infrastructure, you have to bring together metrics, you have to bring traces and logs into that. And so we could not paint a complete picture of Lambda without all three of those pillars. So to support Lambda, we're ingesting data from CloudWatch, we're getting metrics from there, we're getting traces from X-Ray, we're getting logs from, I think, CloudTrail, and all of those things come together into kind of one central dashboard for the product. And that was a new test for us to bring these disparate sources together to really understand a new type of product.
What kind of user research did you do in that transition?
So we do a lot of qualitative user experience testing. And so that can be everything from interviews with our early testers and beta users to these, as I say, these kind of closed beta releases where we'll go and interview a bunch of people that we know are interested in a new product. So we try to iterate quickly in those early phases with the people who care the most about it and get to something that has much wider appeal.
I think you did over 10 episodes on Don't Make Me Code. What has stuck out to you when people say developer experience?
Yeah, there are a few episodes that really stand out to me and that I find myself thinking about all the time. One of them was with Dustin Larimer, and he was at Keen.io then. He's not now. I actually don't know where he is now. At that time, we were talking about Keen's APIs. and how they were going through a major refactor of those APIs, and they began that process with the documentation. So they wrote the documentation that they wanted for their APIs first, and then they actually refactored the APIs to kind of match what they wanted from the docs, which I thought was very cool because, and I think one of the themes of that episode was affordances. And so for designers, you think of affordances in physical objects, like a toothbrush is about the size of your hand, and you can sort of figure out what it is based on that. With software interfaces, we still have affordances, things like buttons and links. We all know what those are. Those are visual affordances. But developers often don't have the luxury of visual affordances. And in fact, if you're dealing with an API, the documentation for that API is the only affordance. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the meaning of good documentation, the importance of good documentation, and how as an actual affordance for developers, it matters a lot. The consistency, the lexicon, the choice of words, all these things are super critical. We did a great job refactoring the DataDog API docs to take into account the different ways people are using the platform, to try to be consistent in terminology, to give people lots of easy ways to find things with these same ideas in mind.
What does that mean to you? How can you deliver good docs?
Specifically with documentation, I think the three things that they have done, that Stripe has done really well from the beginning, and that I think a lot of other people have caught on with this now. I mean, one, just good verbose documentation of everything. Like document every function, document it clearly. Second, provide examples, like this is how you would use this thing. And three, have sort of a copy and paste example where you can literally, take the example verbatim, copy it into your terminal or whatever it is, and get the result you expect. Like with Datadog and with any developer tool, onboarding is almost certainly going to be harder than it will be for some consumer tool. It's not just entering your email address and getting going. That the bar is almost certainly higher. And for Datadog, it's installing an agent. For other companies, it's running shell commands or using APIs or putting in API keys for some other service. And so recognizing what the critical piece of your onboarding experience is and making it as absolutely simple as it possibly can be is super important to traction.
So how do you design for unhappy paths?
This is actually a great point, that error states, error messages, these are also very important parts of the user experience, again, particularly for APIs, that if you do happen to use an API incorrectly, the only feedback you're going to get is the error message that comes back. So it should be as verbose as possible and explain to you what went wrong so you know how to fix it. And that's not only true of APIs, it's particularly true of APIs, but I think this is actually a common pattern across all design, that the prototyping tools that we use have come a long way. We can build much more dynamic simulations of user experiences, but we still almost never do all of those other things. Like, what does this look like if no data comes back? What does it look like if the data is poorly formatted or some kind of error occurs? That we as designers don't think of those things enough.
At Datadog or prior, have you had an experience where you were leading a design project and the person said, well, our audience is very technical, they like complexity, let's just send it out as it is and not try to improve the user experience?
Assuming that a developer is going to want something that's extremely dense and extremely technical is a red herring. Yes, our users are very savvy and very smart, and they use our tools as part of their profession, so they're expert users. That doesn't mean they want to employ all those parts of their brain all the time. And so I've tried hard at pretty much everywhere I've worked to kind of fight the automatic assumption that people have that more and more density, more and more control, more and more icons popping up everywhere to offer every single option that someone might need. Yes, these are power users. Yes, these are people that want to be able to do a lot of things. That does not mean exposing everything all the time, for example. And those are the wrong things to focus on.
It shouldn't be called developer experience, just people experience. They're still people. Do you resonate with that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. They want the same kinds of automation and sensible defaults and streamlined experiences that anyone else wants. Because they've had such great experiences with these consumer products, they're expecting more and more of us.
Has there been a part of developer experience or developer flow where you feel like, man, this is still not moving the needle as I would like?
To influence the experience that developers are having, they have to trust you. As a designer, I think that's compelled me to learn a lot about all of this. And that's now growing a design team is a big challenge, not just hiring people, because hiring designers to work on developer tools is not the easiest thing in the world. It's not the most natural place for a designer to end up. One, it's getting people who are interested in working on these kinds of problems, these highly technical, developer-driven problems, but then also really getting them confident in what they're talking about, getting them to know enough about what they're doing so that they can effectively design. Like, to approach a designer that's brand new to the developer tool space and say, hey, we have this new container scheduling platform we want you to design an experience for, there's a pretty big gap between where they're starting and where they have to get to effectively design that product.
Like you said, you haven't had a full-time coding job, so how were you able to ramp up in this space?
Yeah, I've only learned this stuff slowly. I've been at dev tool companies for almost 10 years now, and I never had anyone else pulling me up the ladder, to be frank. And so now this is a thing that we're dealing with at DataDog. Like, we have a team of 16 product designers, and I would like for them to learn faster than I did. And so we have tried to put in place processes where at the beginning of a big project, we have some sort of kickoff meeting, a sort of design sprint, where a product manager, an engineer, and a couple of designers get into a room and talk about all this stuff. What are the use cases? What does the competition look like? What do the integration points look like? How does this new thing need to talk to other parts of DataDog? And so we try to accelerate all of this. We try to kind of do a rapid fire education to kind of get everyone knowing what they need to know.
Yeah, when they make it through and they're hired and they're onboarding, what are some of the questions that they ask?
As a designer, you are not a user of DataDog, and so from day one, the challenge is getting you to understand what this platform is for and why people use it. For designers, we have some specific onboarding that goes through different product demos that tries to mimic. Our solutions team has built this incredible tool that will let us spin up a new DataDog environment with actual hosts running, and then we can simulate certain kinds of events like an outage or a spike in resource usage. And so we can, with a button, I can kind of click to simulate one of these events. That'll generate a page or a set of emails to these new designers who can, I think, pretty closely then get the feel of what it's like to be on call. And so the exercise actually walks them through this. Like, I sort of explain what the environment is like, I explain the different kinds of incidents that can happen, and then when they get this page, it's their responsibility to try to figure out what went wrong and where it went wrong, like what host failed in what way, and to then kind of report that back as part of the exercise. And so that's been a great thing to just help with the empathy of a new designer on the team, understanding how people are using DataDog. And it's even revealed to us some of the big pain points in our experience when you're getting an alert and you want to get to the right part of the product, like how to streamline those kinds of workflows. Designers gravitate towards products that already have great design. So, the design teams at Instagram or Airbnb are, very well established, and so a lot of designers want to go there. But in reality, as a new designer on a team like that, your impact is quite small, where developer tools are still largely underserved by design. So if you want to be a designer at a company like this, you can have a big impact.
How is design for B2B companies different than B2C for you?
B2B and SaaS and developer tools, these are tools that people are using every day. And so we are not measuring engagement. Like, our goal is not to keep you on the platform as long as possible. We're not serving you ads. Like, people are paying us sometimes millions of dollars a year to not be in the tool. That when someone gets notified at 3 o'clock in the morning that their system is down, they want to fix it as fast as humanly possible and go back to bed. So speed and power and efficiency those are the kinds of things that we're tracking. Like, what is the shortest amount of time we can keep them on the platform for? How can we get them to finish their jobs and move on with their lives?
Do you think designers, even of a Facebook or a B2C app, should try to aim for that less time in our app metric?
I mean, we've started to see these, like, engagement as a toxic metric, like society is being reshaped around, like, people spending far too much time in social media. And I feel lucky to work on a product like this because it's a pretty straightforward business. People pay us money for software. If they don't like it, they stop paying us and they leave. There's no servant of two masters. There's really no complexity to any of this. It's a tool that people need to do their jobs. And so I like building tools. I also like having that relationship with customers. Like, I can tell you the names and faces of our biggest customers because I see them pretty frequently.
Definitely. Any last words of advice to designers and engineers in the DX space?
The diversity of the dev tool space has grown so much over time. I don't know that there's one piece of advice I could give to a new company in the space except the seamlessness of your onboarding experience and the effectiveness of a small surface area of product. We talk about MVPs a lot, the minimum viable product that you can build, but yeah, just to kind of draw that out a little bit, that there is often one killer feature that you can build for one specific kind of workflow that's really going to get people onto your platform, and just relentlessly focusing on that one thing and doing it really well can be a great start to a much broader experience. And so not trying to build a large surface area of product early, but really focusing on one thing and getting it right.
Great. Can you end with just your name and saying goodbye or something?
Yeah, I'm Steve, and it's been fun chatting.